All right, so continuing on here, each linear inequality results in an inequality answer as well. Okay, so that's very important that we understand that. This is going to represent the large spectrum of values. We can get that in there. Spectrum of values which can satisfy the problem. Now, when I say this, we're talking about like which numbers are going to work. Okay, when we talk about speed, I can in a 100 km/h zone, we can drive 100, 99, 98, 97, 96 without breaking the law that has been put in place there. If we start to go and do 101, 102, that's going to be technically breaking the law. Okay, we're looking at which values are going to work. Okay, there's a wide spectrum of values that work. Okay, some may not be acceptable, but they do still work. Okay? And that's what we have with an inequality. Okay, and that's what we need to make sure we're watching out for. Now, there is a difference. The difference between solving equations and inequalities is that when both sides, make sure to finish this here. The difference between them is that when both sides are multiplied and I'm going nice and slow here, apologies for that, or divided by a negative value. Okay, so this happens when we're trying to get rid of the coefficient. Okay, so this is the only difference here. Okay, so the only difference is when it's divided, multiplied or divided by a negative value. When this happens, the inequality sign is flipped. Okay, so normally we leave the inequality sign exactly where it is. But if we are also multiply or divide by by a negative value, so each term, then we have to flip it around. Okay, so less than changes to a greater than, or less than and equal to changes to a greater than or equal to. So let's take a look at a couple questions and see how are we going to solve these. Now, the first one's not dealing with a negative. Well, we could, but we're going to try not to deal with a negative here. The first one deals with where we have an x on both sides, and we want to get it onto the same side. What we're going to do with this here is we want to try to get all the x's on one side and the numbers on the other. To do that, we need to add 5 to both sides. That's supposed to be a 5. And we're also going to subtract both sides by 3x. Okay, and what this is going to do is it's going to move the x's to one side and it's going to move all of our numbers to the other side. So when we do this here, now again, this is doing a couple steps in one shot. And if you're unsure about that, please ask me in class and we'll go through kind of where those steps come from here. But 6x minus 3x is 3x. And inequality sign stays the same. 4 plus 5 is 9. Okay, now we're going to divide, but we are going to divide by a positive number, so it's not going to change our sign at all. So we're going to divide this by 3 and divide this by 3. And this whole long thing can be simplified to x is greater than 3. X greater than 3. Let's just leave it like that. All right. X is greater than 3, and that solves it. That simplifies it. Okay. So in this case here, if we were to take a number that was bigger than 3, so let's say 5, and put it in here, this would be 30 minus 5, which is 25. This would be 15, 19. So 25 is greater than 19. Yep, it works. Okay. There's some quick, just some quick math involved there. All right. Now let's take a look at where we actually are dealing with a negative value, and this is kind of what I was mentioning ahead. This is another example that I want to show you. We just kind of worked out in that place there. In this case here, we want to get x by itself. Again, we have a negative coefficient, so we're going to add 8 to both sides. to get rid of that. And when we do that, this is where we're going to get that negative coefficient kind of all by itself. So 4 plus 8 is 12. Give a second here. 12 is less than or equal to negative 3x. And now we're going to divide by our negative 3 because we want to get rid of that coefficient there. So we need to divide by negative 3. Divide this side by negative 3 and divide this term by negative 3. Sorry, every term is divided by negative 3. Now when we do this, this is going to change. Okay, it's now less than sign. It's going to become a greater than sign. So when we do that, we just flip the entire symbol, or the entire inequality. So 12 divided by negative 3 is negative 4, and now it is greater than or equal to x. Okay, so instead of x being greater than negative 4, x is actually less than or equal to negative 4. So we switch the inequality. You'll notice how it's been switched. It was a less than, now it's a greater than. Okay, it gets switched anytime we multiply or divide by a negative number. Let's do it one more time here. Okay, so here we have a case 2 is greater than negative 2 over 3x plus 4. We're going to start off by subtracting 4 from both sides. And what we get let's plug that in there. So 2 minus 4 is going to be negative 2. Negative 2 is greater than negative 2 over 3x. All right, now in this case here, we have a fraction. So there's one of two things that I can do. I can either multiply by 3, okay, or I can divide by the entire thing. I'm going to go through the simpler way again. I'm going to multiply by 3, then I'll divide by 2. And so again, two different things. We can multiply by negative 3 or just multiply by 3. I'm going to start by just multiplying by 3. This is not going to change the sign because we are multiplying by a positive value. Okay, we're multiplying by a positive, so it doesn't change the sign. It's going to keep it at a greater than sign. And so this is negative 6 is greater than negative 2x. Okay, so we got rid of the 3, but the negative 2 still stays there. It's still negative because we did not, we multiplied by a positive, so it stays as a negative. All right, final thing then, to get that x by itself, we need to divide by negative 2. Ooh. All right. There you go, we're dividing by negative 2. It's supposed to be a negative 2. Apologies if it doesn't look quite like 1. Now, when we divide by a negative, okay, this is where, again, we need to change the sign. Okay, so the sign's going to adjust. Now, we got negative 6 divided by negative 2 is positive 3. This sign becomes a less than sign. It was greater than, now it's less than x. So x is greater than 3. So again, when we're solving them, we solve it exactly the way we would with linear equations. Okay, doing the same steps, moving the same things apart. But now if we multiply or divide every piece by a negative number, we need to make sure we flip the sign around. So the sign gets flipped. Okay, it's a small thing, but it makes a large difference. We can check our answers to make sure that it works. Okay, and I will ask you to check your answers, at least with 1 or 2 values at times. And so you'll show how you'll plug an answer. X is greater than 3, so pick 5. Okay, does it work? Okay, actually, I'm going to pick 6. It's a little bit nicer one. So if we put 6 in here, this is negative 4 plus 4 is 0. 2 is greater than 0. Boom, done. Okay, we know that it works. Questions 5 to 7 finish off the assignment. Okay, if you have questions, please ask. Okay, make sure that you're showing your work. Make sure you're showing your steps. And if it has to graph out your answer. If it has to show using a test point, solve using a test point.